to disassemble and replace the spring, YIKA YK14, you need to remove the barrel, which pulls off, and this little bit beneath it, which also twists off. You need to remove the rail system using the screwdriver and taking that screw there out. It's only a short screw. Then slides off the front to leave the base of your rifle there. Remove the mag and put the safety on, just because it gets in the way, not because it's going to shoot anything. I suppose before you put the safety on you should check that it hasn't been cocked. Got two screws, one here and one at the front here, which need to be unscrewed to remove the upper receiver from the lower receiver, and one here. You then simply lift the front up and then slide it out, and then you have your upper receiver with all the firing mechanism in it. There are 8 screws to undo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 down there. I have upgraded the spring in this already once from its original spring to an M110 AEG spring, and it fires fine with one of those. It doesn't destroy the piston or any other internals in the gun. You do have to file part of it down though, because the AEG spring is slightly thinner. It's also slightly longer, but that doesn't make too much difference. But I'm upgrading the M110 spring to an M160 spring, which will probably blow the gun apart, but there's only one way to find out. So just lift the top half of the upper receiver away from the lower half. I start at the mag, where the maggot goes in, because I have a place to pull on each side. Yep, there goes that spring. There are 2 bolts, one there and one here, which are what the screws that hold the upper and lower receiver together, so make sure you don't lose those, and make sure that they go back in when you're reassembling it. So inside the gun you have the barrel, which has 2 notches, one at each side, which slot in to this gap here. And there are spaces for the barrel to sit in down the front of the gun. You have the nozzle connected to the compression chamber, and you have the piston. You also have this piece which the spring rests on, which goes in here. This is the bit that I had to file down. I had to file down the top and the bottom. I also did the sides a bit to allow the spring to slide easily over it. Okay, I haven't lost the springs. So the raised bit wants to be pointing to the top of the gun. Just slots into a notch there, where this bit on one side of the notch and this bit on the other side of the notch. Now it's all your trigger sections should stay on this side of the gun, but if they don't, like mine just didn't, you have two bits that are likely to spring, which is the trigger and the piece that catches on the piston as it's drawn back. So the piece that catches on the piston wants to go, the spring wants to rest here where there's a little bit of a gap on the bit that sticks out, and the pin on it wants to go in that hole there. And the trigger wants to slot into that hole there. In between where the spring is resting and the bit that catches the piston. Now you get your new spring. Like I said, this is an M160, which I wouldn't recommend. Not that I've tried it yet, but I still wouldn't recommend it. And you slot that into the piston and slot it onto the bit that holds the spring guide, which I'm going to take out for the purpose of such a powerful spring. The piston has a little square there, and that slots into the run here, which guides it where it's meant to go. It just slots in. The piston, the big square bit, wants to be at the top, just resting against the top of the slide. Barrel's fallen out again, joys. So barrel just pushes back in. Make sure when you put the barrel in that this end of it has a gap. What? Making a video. Great.
Sorry.
It's alright. But I did tell you I was doing it.
Right, yes. Yeah, when you've done it,
Well, it's not going to be. It's going to be a while now because I have to start again.
I'm sorry.
Or I'll just carry on. Sorry for the interruption. That was my mum trying to tell me to do some revision. The end of it is only half enclosed, and the gap at the bottom wants to be facing down, as that is where the pellets feed into. Then you slot your spring in. What a daunting prospect. I'm gonna slot the bolts back into where they should go. There and at the front here. Compress the spring. All the way in. You might want to wear eye protection if you're going to put in such a powerful spring, in case it all springs out. It's quite capable of taking your eye out. Great. Then you want to slot the upper part onto the lower part. Oh no, it broke loose. The upper part onto the lower part, making sure that the spring is in, which mine isn't now, but you won't be using as powerful a spring, I hope, so you won't have to worry about that. Put the 8 screws back in. You've made sure that your bolts are still in the guns, in the holes. Slot what looks like a hook down, in, and then the bottom half will all slot into place. Put the two bolts I'm not sure where the other one is, back into their holes, and one of the bipod. Screw them down, then slot your rail back on top, screw that down, and after attaching the little nozzle thing and the barrel back on, it'll all be ready to go.